We record these meetings because we post them on our YouTube page, so you can access meetings that you missed or go back to ones if you want to hear about something. Again, I just dropped that in the chat. And yeah, so we do a featured speaker every month. We have somebody lined up for November, but would love for any of you to come and talk about what you're working on or to bounce ideas. You can facilitate a discussion, ask questions, or you can present about what you're doing and what you're thinking about. So let me know if you'd like to do that in a coming month. And yeah, so we'll take some time now for announcements and updates. Zach just told us some cool news about getting featured on NPR tomorrow. So everybody read the news tomorrow, or is it going to be an audio?
There's an online story and there'll be the radio version of it too.
Okay, awesome. So actually tune in. Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else want to share an update or a highlight from their work, something going on? That's awesome, Alexis. First program next week, marketing for small businesses. Very good. Hoping Carly would join us to tell us about the ELC program, which is coming up in early November. I can do that if she's not jumping on. Anybody else have updates, announcements, want to say hi? Okay, before we start with Roslyn, then yeah, I will share. So Carly is the co-chair this year of the EntreLib or ELC mini conference in November. It's a virtual conference on November 7th. The theme is Impact Innovators, Driving Change Through Social Entrepreneurship. I believe they're still collecting proposals for the presentations, which are just a 15-minute, or the lightning talks, which are 7 minutes. So if you are interested in presenting to colleagues about your work, let me find the link. You can do that. And then also, I don't think they've opened the registration yet, but stay tuned to that. I know we'll post it in the LBB Slack as well. So that's really my only announcement, I think. Going once, going twice. Okay, Roslyn, it's you. You have the
Okay.
mic.
Let me see if I can figure out. There it is. How to do this. So I told Megan this presentation, I'm not sure I really have anything all that important to share, but it did give me a good excuse to go through all my pictures of the Applegate. So you have lots of pictures of mountains and paragliders to look at while I blather away at you. So when I started this job in 2022, I had no experience with rural business at all. I moved up here from a large metro area, and so I had just never dealt with rural business. It's been a steep learning curve, but after a couple of years, I finally built a relationship with some important community groups. And I've also learned that a rural community runs on a real different rhythm. Today, I want to talk about some wins and some setbacks that I've encountered as I learn more about rural business and what makes this region tick. So when I first was considering this job, I thought, where is Jackson County anyway? So I thought I'd start by giving you a sense of my location. So I live in the boonies. We're about 5 hours drive from Portland, just north of the California, and we're just north of the California border. So Portland is the big city up here. And I-5 kind of runs north-south through the state, right through Jackson County. Medford is the big city in Jackson County with 80,000 people. And the next largest city as you head south through California is Redding, and it's not really that much bigger. It's 92,000. So I know it's not really a big city, but it's big for around here. A lot of Oregon politics and business can be explained by population density. 4/5 of the state population is in the northwest quadrant, basically from Eugene to Portland. So basically in this area. Oregon has 6 congressional districts. 5 of them are here. District 2 is all the rest of the state, including Jackson County, up to about Roseburg right there. So this valley is the Willamette Valley, and that is the area that drives a lot of Oregon agriculture and business. The rest of the state, by contrast, is much less populated. Jackson County's population is about 220,000 total, and that makes it the most heavily populated county in southern Oregon, in fact, south of Eugene. By contrast, neighboring Josephine County has 87,000 people, and Klamath, which is over here, has 70,000. So there's just no people here. The green dot is where the Applegate Valley is located, and that's the area that I'm going to talk about today. It is much smaller than the Willamette Valley, but also more complicated. I stole this map from the Greater Applegate Association, which you will hear about a lot in this presentation. And I wanted to show it because it gives a fairly picturesque view of the Applegate Valley, but it also shows that for people who live here, they think they live in the Applegate. So if you ask a local where they live, they'll say, oh, I live in Provo in the Applegate. They don't say, I live in Josephine County. They live in the Applegate. So to them, this is their neighborhood, all 500 square miles of it and 3 counties. So it's a very tight-knit community, but it's also a very small and hemmed in sort of community. So they don't get out much. I mean, there is not a large grocery store from Medford. Medford over here is where the big grocery stores are, and there is not another grocery store until you get to Grants Pass. So that's why it is a very, very rural area. Here's another view of the Applegate Valley. I used A to Z databases to make a heat map of all the businesses. So I found 1,100 businesses in the area. There's primarily agricultural, but there's also quite a bit of construction and manufacturing, lots of excavation companies and landscaping, that kind of thing. So that's the kind of businesses there are. And you could see some of the names of the towns, but you have to realize that these are basically wide places in the road. There's no city council, there's no mayor, there's no city government for any of these towns. The bigger ones like Grass Pass and Gold Hill all along I-5 here do have regular municipal governments, but there is just nothing out here until Cave Junction. I think Cave Junction has a municipal government over in Josephine, but that's it. Because again, there's just not a lot of people here. And some more statistics just to give you a sense of what the area is like. These statistics are for the Applegate Valley, not just the whole county. As you can see, it's a fairly small population to be spread over so many square miles. The population is aging, just like the US population is, because a lot of the original farmers who moved there or who have lived there for generations, they're getting older, just like the boomers are. Unfortunately, a lot of their kids don't want to take over the farm, and there's not a lot of young people who want to move in there and take over the farm because it is a really hard life and it's not terribly profitable unless you really, really love farming. It's not that attractive. a lot of the housing units are owned, but there's a flip side to that, which is there's not a lot of places for workers to live if they just want to rent, if they don't have the money to buy a home. And buying a home in the Applegate means not just buying a house in a suburb, you're buying a farm. So it's pretty expensive to buy good agricultural land. There's also just not a lot of land to buy. One of the contrasts of the West to other parts of the country is that much of the land is publicly owned by the federal government. So, for example, in Jackson County, 50% of the land is owned by the federal government, mostly by the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. Also, a lot of it is national forest. A lot of it is Siskiyou National Forest or Winema National Forest. Josephine is even higher percentage of public land. Compare that to the average for rural Oregon, which is a little higher than Jacksonville, but much lower than Josephine. So there's just not a lot of arable land there. And that is reflected in the incomes. These are county statistics, not just Applegate, because there's no way to find this kind of statistic just for the Applegate region. Jackson County's median income is higher because this is where a lot of the professional services are. This is where the hospital is and the airport. People keep, my friends keep saying, how do you get in and out of Medford? Is there an airport? I'm like, yes, we have 6 whole gates at the airport. So, high living, because we are like the regional center for a lot of services in Southern Oregon. But I know that's not saying much compared to the rest of the country. I was very interested in this ALICE benchmark that I came across. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And it seeks to quantify financial hardship beyond poverty levels. It measures households that maybe don't fall beneath the poverty line, but they also don't earn enough to pay for basic necessities in the communities where they live. So this shows that, the Applegate still like 40, or the county in general, 43% of these households don't meet the financial criteria to pay for basic necessities. So it's lower than the rural Oregon average, but that's still pretty high for the county. And Josephine County is even higher in terms of people being very financially constrained. So this is all to show you that Applegate is really different from any area I've ever worked in before. It's very different from the urban downtowns that I'm used to dealing with. It's much less diverse industry, much smaller population, and for the most part, there's no city government or chamber of commerce to work with in terms of community groups. It's just a very different situation. So when I moved up here in 2022, the previous business librarian had left a project that hadn't quite gotten finished. And so my initial task was to take that over and finish a guide to rural business resources that the previous librarian had started but not finished. So I thought, this is great. This is how I'll get to know some folks in the county, and I will investigate the rural resources for myself, and and finally have a project to work on this summer while I'm getting my feet under me. So Rogue Valley Food System is a nonprofit focused on promoting local food cultivation. One of the curiosities of the area is that there's plenty of produce grown here, but people just sell to large distributors, and then the food is moved out of the valley. So then you have to go to the grocery store to buy vegetables and food. So Rogue Valley Food System is trying to keep more of the produce in this area and make it economically viable for farmers to sell their produce locally and not sell to big distributors. So they're trying to change that dynamic and make it economically feasible for small farmers to sell locally. So we partnered on a grant with them, and I was supposed to produce a guide to rural business resources. However, my contact at RVFS proved elusive. She only worked part-time, and she had small children, and she didn't really seem that interested in talking to me or fulfilling the grant requirements. I kept emailing her and saying, this grant is due and this report is due in 3 months. Can you call me back? And she just didn't. She kept scheduling meetings, and then she would cancel them, or she would just ghost me, not bother to cancel. And the one Zoom meeting that we managed to have, it was plagued by internet glitches because broadband is just not a thing out there. Unless you pay for satellite internet, you don't have it. So it was a real struggle to get feedback. And after several months, I just sent her my draft and I said, here's what I got. I'm not going to work on this anymore until I hear from you. Let me know what else I can do. And I didn't hear from her for months. So that was kind of a bust. I had more success making contact with Greater Applegate. At first, I called the person that I was supposed to call, and he was on vacation, and then he didn't come back from vacation. I finally found out that, unfortunately, while he was on vacation, he'd had a heart attack. And so he was recuperating for a couple of months, and that left a vacuum at AGA. And again, nobody knew me. They had no reason to call me back. And so they didn't. So the lessons I've learned is, just like most small business owners, these folks are really busy. It takes a long, long time to earn their trust. And for most of them, there's no backup. If they're sick or busy or have family issues, there is nobody else to pick up the slack because there's just not a lot of people. And rural lives just run on a whole different schedule. However, by September, some of my efforts started to pay off. Finally, AGA got organized and they hired a business network coordinator, a woman named Ashley. And she invited me to their first ever business resource fair. And we hit it off. So now I was on her mailing list. So this was a big step forward. And, just having this kind of gathering was actually a new thing for them. This is an area that has no downtown. There's no central area where people gather. There's no like one coffee shop where all the movers and shakers hang out. Like I said, there's most of it is public land. There's a lot of mountains and trees. That's about it. There's no chamber of commerce. There's no merchants association. There's nothing like that. So I just kept showing up to anything that I found out about, anything. And they'd be like, why are you here? Where's your farm? I'm like, I'm the business librarian. Let me help you. So the turning point though was March of 2023. So like, I kept inviting myself to things. And finally in March 2023, they invited me to a reception for a business boot camp that I did not know about. And I was mad about that because I'd been on all the mailing lists, but at least they invited me to the reception. So I drove out to Longsword Vineyard in the pouring rain, put on my rain boots, because you just wear boots out there. You don't wear nice shoes. It's muddy. And I went to this, and so I went out to this party and I walked in, and when I walked in the door, Allison, the frustrating person from Rogue Valley Food System, gave me a big hug and said, "We're so glad to see you." I still don't know what happened. I honestly do not know what changed her mind. This is the woman who ghosted me for 6 months. I think I made friends with Ashley, and Ashley told her that I was okay. I really think that was the key. So anyway, that was nice. And then she introduced me to Kate Vangeloff, who was the manager of the vineyard. And that was where really things started to take off, because they were planning to have a farmer's market at Kate's Vineyard, Longsword, that summer. And in chatting with her, I said, how are you going to manage contactless payment out here in the Valley? And she's like, oh, I don't know. Our cell reception out here is so terrible. And I said, well, how about the DART van? The DART van is our mobile hotspot van. It brings computers and a satellite hotspot out to the Valley. And it got started during the pandemic because so many people had no internet connectivity out there. They commissioned this van to have a mobile hotspot and computers to make it easier for people to get online out there, because we couldn't open the libraries and have people indoors during the pandemic. So we found a way to have a mobile hotspot. So she's like, I didn't even know the library had that. Nobody knows. We keep telling them, but they don't pay attention. So she said, so the library can provide Wi-Fi for the vendors? And I said, like, absolutely. We'll be there. When does it start? So we were there every week through the summer of 2023, with either the DART or just me and 2 mobile hotspots, 2 little hockey pucks. And I would put one at my table and one over by the tasting room. So we would kind of cover the whole market. And so that's really when it started to take off. They also invited us to the Rogue Valley Food System fundraiser, the Bluegrass Barbecue and Blues, at the beginning of the year. So those 2 events meant that I met a lot more people out there. And these were also just generally good for library outreach. We signed up a lot of kids for summer reading who normally wouldn't have signed up. We signed up a lot of adults for it as well. We touted our library of things because we have like food dehydrators and food processor attachments and all those kinds of things available for checkout, and people didn't know about that. So it was really good for library outreach. And every single market, I walked around to all the vendors with my little sheet saying, we're providing Wi-Fi for vendors to make it easier for you to do contactless payment. Here's the password. And by the way, I'm the business librarian. Can I help you with something? Most of the time, they're just kind of looked at me like I sprouted a second head, but they were grateful for the Wi-Fi once I got everybody set up on it. So I highly recommend getting a prize wheel if you go out and do outdoor events, because that attracted people to the table, and then I could sign them up for summer reading. So this is one of my prize winners. So this is what Kate had to say at the end of the summer. This is another key I have learned. Ask for impact stories. People generally are happy with your services, but they won't think to tell you unless you say, can you just send me 2 or 3 sentences about how the library has impacted your business? So it's very useful for going back to the board of directors and saying, guess what I did? Or for the library foundation to go out and say, we need more money for the DART to buy a new satellite hotspot. So that worked out very well. So now I'm in like Flynn with AGA and to a certain extent RVFS, although Allison is still a very frustrating person, but I think she just doesn't return phone calls. But at least I get invited to all the events. So see, now we have more events that we go to. So this summer we did the Applegate Evening Market, and they also had the Jacksonville County Fair, which was like a whole country fair because they had a whole week of events. They had the Bluegrass Barbecue and Blues, that's their fundraiser. And they also had the Country Queer Summerfest, which was like a drag show and market at Rouge Electric Flower Gardens at the beginning of June. So now they know that we can provide the mobile hotspots and the Wi-Fi for the vendors, and they keep inviting us to things. So I get to meet more and more vendors. So my approach was the same as when I worked in a metro area, find the community groups to partner with. But finding the groups and getting to be a trusted person took a lot longer. But now it's starting to pay off. For example, the person who manages the Applegate Evening Market, she refers all her new vendors to me. So I help them get their permits for being in the market and help them navigate the cottage kitchen rules, make sure that if they're going to be selling pickles or jam or bread, that they are, following all of the state and county rules for making home-based products. And I also put together a Food and Farms webpage on our website that gives everybody kind of the starting steps to getting one of those businesses started, so that all of the resources that I've collected, I put on the webpage, gives me a one-stop shop to point people to. But there've been a lot of setbacks too. I still need to update my list of commercial kitchens because it's getting a little bit out of date. A lot of the vendors at the farmers markets are just not that interested in working with me. I haven't found the right way to appeal to them to like make a business plan or make use of any of the data. They're more interested in growing lavender or making pickles. And a lot of them just don't understand what kind of help I could give them with data and making a business plan or finding a list of B2B customers. A few of them do. Like I worked with Oshala Herb Farms. They grow organic herbs, and they wanted to expand into pet pharmaceuticals. So I helped them find a list of pharmaceutical companies that had a line for pets, because I guess that's a growing market, is for organically sourced pet vitamins and pharmaceuticals. So a few of them are sophisticated enough to understand what I can provide, but a lot of them are not. I still don't know anything about viticulture. I like drinking wine, but I still don't understand like the whole science behind it. And it is still really, really hard to reach Hispanic vendors and growers. This is a pretty white area. I would say it's like 89% Caucasian, but there is a small but vibrant Hispanic population. They just live kind of on the down low because it is also unfortunately safer for them to kind of keep it low key. And I've showed you a lot of pretty pictures today. Like I said, this gave me an excuse to dig through all of my pretty pictures of mountains. But this area has a lot of challenges. Climate change is the biggest one. It's changing the way agriculture works here. So a lot of the farming techniques from the past 40 years don't work anymore. The County Agriculture Extension gives workshops on climate grief, how to deal with the mental burden of knowing that the climate is changing and the farm that you have farmed for 30 years is not going to produce like it used to anymore. You have to change crops completely because you can't grow pears here anymore. It's too hot. Wildfire is a constant threat. Smoke is a constant threat. Fire season used to be just August, and now it's June through September. This picture is from a fire from June, which is really unusual for a wildfire to get started in June. It's about 15 miles from my house as the crow flies. Getting there on the road is a lot longer, but it's 15 miles if I was a bird. Everybody in this county has watch duty on it's an app on their phone, and it notifies you of all the fire starts in the county, so you'll know where a wildfire is starting and how to avoid it if possible. And everybody knows their evacuation zone. So it comes up on my watch too. Both the grape and wine market and the marijuana markets are tanked in the last couple of years, and farmers aren't making any money. Human trafficking is a huge problem. People get trafficked here to work on illegal weed grows and live in desperate squalor up somewhere in the Siskiyous. And then when they get busted, they're destitute. They have nothing. So there's a couple of organizations that the library works with that will at least get them food and clothing because they've basically been living under tarps out in the woods. So living conditions for the migrant workers who are here legally are not that much better. They're here to pick the pears and the grapes, but they basically live in concrete huts. So there's still a lot of challenges. But somewhat more optimistically, for the future, there's a couple of things I'm working on. The Gale Business Handbook, or the Handbook of Business Plans, is a great resource, but it's not that great for rural businesses. And so one of the things I'm trying to work on with AGA is coming up with a set of sample business plans focused on rural and tourist businesses. The area is moving from agrarian-only economy to kind of agri-tourism. All of the vineyards attract tourists. There's a lot of Airbnbs for people who want to get away out to the country. So there's a lot of tension between the people who were just farmers and just want to keep that way and the people who see that agritourism is the way to make more money in the future. Nobody wants, there's a lot of discussion about, we don't want it to be like Napa Valley, which they refer to as wine Disneyland. They don't want wine Disneyland, but they also want the tourist dollars. So a lot of tension there. The other thing is I've applied for a grant with the Oregon Community Foundation to put on a rural entrepreneur in residence program. So if I get the grant, then we will feature a couple of local farmers who've done really well and get them to teach workshops on how to have a better lavender farm or how to improve your goat farm.
What? Is everything good?
So we'll find out if I win that grant after Thanksgiving and see what happens with that. So hopefully in 2025, that's what I'll be working on, but I won't know. So I wanted to leave you with the most Oregon picture I have ever taken. It's a picture I took at Country Queer Summerfest. And yes, those are drag queens throwing axes out in the mountains. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And let me quit sharing so I can see. There.
Thank you, Roslyn. That was awesome. I'm very, we're working a lot with like hotspot stuff. So to hear about how you used it to connect the farmers market and all the vendors, such a good idea. I love that. I'm going to follow up with you about that. So thank you.
Okay.
I had a question.
Okay.
I'm curious, you mentioned that a lot of the vendors were hesitant to engage with, what you were offering as a librarian. Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel like that was because they don't have an understanding of like the mission of the library, or did they view you just as an outsider because you aren't a farmer, or do you think it's maybe just a distrust of libraries?
I think partially it is just not understanding the mission of the library. Like I said, a lot of people are not familiar with my role here. I'm not sure it's just so much distrust of libraries. The library is still a trusted source of information. Well, except for the guy who explained to me that he can't come to the library because the Wi-Fi was affecting his brain and he couldn't think when he was inside. And he wanted to know if we could make a part of the library that didn't have Wi-Fi so he could still come in. And I'm like, well, I'll look into that, but I'm not sure. But we do have at-home service, so we could deliver books and DVDs to you. He wanted to use the internet, but not the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi made his brain hurt. So part of it was just also, they're busy growing crops and they're not so much about let me get data. And also, I'm also talking to them at the market when they're getting ready to sell products, and they don't have time to discuss like business strategy because they're setting up and getting ready to sell to customers. So I haven't found a better way to talk to them when they're not getting ready to do business.
Roslyn, I will just say here in Youngstown, Ohio, we dropped all of Gale products. We don't have anything Gale anymore.
Really?
So we don't get the business plans handbook or anything like that. And I just use the sbdcnet.org website, and it has like over 800 example business plans on it that you can just grab. So I use that. And then I also use the, actually on the brass listserv recently, there was a Business School of Journalism link about covering how do you know certain industries and what terms to know. And I posted that link in the chat too. You might want to look.
Okay.
I found that link very helpful, but
Okay.
just for me, I didn't want to spend any more. We couldn't spend money on any Gale products. And we dropped, demographics now is gone. So, yeah. So we just use the internet basically. And another thing too, I recommend for everybody is to go to score.org and click on the business planning templates, and then download a new business template, because it's basically like just you erase the paragraph they have and put your paragraph there. So it says, for like the mission, write this, so it's literally like back and forth. So that's what I do all the time.
Sounds good. I'll have to look into it.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I wanted to say I appreciate how you described having to invite yourself to these meetings and being ghosted for 6 months and just how hard it is. And you've persevered and done a lot, but I think it's just, especially for people maybe just getting into this, it's just, or for those of us who've been doing it and have had similar experiences, it's very validating, but it's hard to make those connections. Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. No, I mean, I've been doing this for a couple of years and I still kind of have to mentally like, okay, I'm going to this thing, because my natural instinct is just to like not go. I now know enough people at these things that there's usually one or two folks that I know that I, get started chatting with, and then it's fine. But I still have to kind of put on my big girl pants and go.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Laura. I think from talking to so many people, it's really about chipping away at the relationships to make progress. And that's not, you don't just start that up in a month or 6 months. It takes time and capacity, and that's just something that's really hard to kind of dig through. So
I'm
um,
lucky now that my initial friend, Ashley, has moved on from Greater Applegate, but the new business resource person is Kate, who used to manage the Longsword Vineyard. So I lucked out there. So
nice.
I've still got a good contact at AGA, but people do change jobs. And as much as I hate it, when I'm like, dang, I just got in with that group, and now, then now they've taken off. But yeah, it's an ongoing struggle for sure.
Yeah, you just did an awesome job for what you're doing. You're doing great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're very kind.
Beth, I see your question in the chat. We can connect you with someone that did that at their library. So the Independence Public Library in Kansas did that as part of the Libraries Build Business project. So that's probably actually on our webpage as well, but I'm happy to connect you.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. If any of you happen to be coming to Southern Oregon, which is, I admit, it's kind of off the beaten path, but if you get here, look me up and I will take you to all my favorite vineyards.
That sounds like an offer we shouldn't pass up.
Absolutely. Come to Portland and start driving south. It's not really that far.
I'm in Vancouver, Washington, so
Yeah.
that would actually be doable. And I also really appreciated the context you gave around that area and the unique challenges down there. I mean, even I'm from the Northwest and I didn't even know a lot of that. You have very specific challenges.
Very specific challenges there. Well, and that's just one part of the county. I mean, there's another rural area up in the north of the county where Butte Falls and Prospect, it's even tinier, there's even more trees. And Butte Falls has an interesting project going on where the city got money together to buy the forest around the town. And so they call it the Butte Falls Community Forest. And that it's basically meant to be maintained as a buffer zone for wildfires to keep it from wildfires from taking the town. But the problem is that the woman who spearheaded that project unfortunately had health issues and had to retire. And so once again, there is nobody up there to kind of keep that moving forward. That project would benefit greatly from someone to champion it and go out and get more grants so they can develop the falls area. The Butte Falls actually is gorgeous. They want to, and they need to develop it a little bit more just so that there's like picnic tables there and a parking lot to make it easier for city people like me to get out there and have a nice day out in the woods. But Butte Falls has like 400 people in town and most of them are over 70. So there's just no one to take that over. That's the project I keep looking at and thinking I could help you if there was somebody to work with, but finding the people to work with is the real challenge sometimes.
Roslyn, it's Stacy. It's really great to see you. I'm sorry my camera's not working today. It's great to hear all of the different populations that you're serving, and because I know you have a ton of ground to cover. I'm just curious, are you still working with the Medford business community as well, or has that kind of gone on the back burner as you've been focusing on the more rural?
No, I still work with downtown Medford. In fact,
Fantastic.
I'm getting ready I just yesterday sent out the registration form to all the downtown businesses I worked with last year for Downtown Quest. So
Nice.
we're still going to do that. So yes, I still work with the city merchants. Medford Library is the big library in our system, and that's where I'm based, where I'm sitting right now. And so keeping that relationship with the downtown merchants good is still very, very important to us, because for a long time there was an antagonistic relationship between the library and the business folks, because a lot of them blamed the library for the local unhoused population. It's like, why are you attracting those people? And they
Jeez.
didn't, I know. I'm like, because they're the public and they come here because there's nowhere else to go and it's really hot in July. But anyway, downtown businesses have had to literally put up with a raft of shit um, from the unhoused population, and they blamed us. And there was a lot of misinformation going around. So now at least they will come to me and say, is it true that the library is required to let homeless people camp there? Don't you have some sort of grant that requires that? I'm like, well, no. Let's explain what we're trying to do here. So now at least they trust me. Unfortunately, the executive director for the Downtown Medford Association left. And so again, there's nobody in that position right now. So I'm kind of doing it on my own. But now I know enough of the downtown merchants that I should be able to get a core group together to do Downtown Quest for for Small Business Saturday. And Stacy was my mentor that first summer, and she was very, very helpful in helping me get oriented towards rural business. So I owe her a lot.
Well, I'm just super glad that the Small Business Saturday program is working for you in that community, because we had to sunset it up here, but
Yeah.
it seems like you've got an audience for it, which is
I
fantastic.
think we do. I think we do. I've streamlined it a lot. I'm not doing the raffle this year. We did a raffle and some of the businesses were really generous and donated really nice prizes. And I picked the raffle winners and said, oh, here's what you won. And like, no one came and picked up the prizes. Like I called and emailed. I'm like, you won a prize, come get it.
Oh my gosh.
I know. You have
Wow.
$50 gift certificate to Luncheonette, which is my favorite restaurant. Didn't come get it. Like, free money, people. Free lunch. Come on, let's go. So we're just gonna give out library stickers as prizes this year. So it's a little bit streamlined.
Streamline sounds good.
Yeah.
Stuart dropped the Los Angeles Public Street Vendor Program link in the chat. Jim's asking about the climate concern from your farmers.
Oh. What are the climate concerns? I mean, what's the question? Let me see.
Oh, sorry. I was just curious about how frequently it comes up when you're in conversation with them.
It doesn't come up in conversation with me so much as I see what's going on with Applegate, and just, I mean, wildfire is a huge topic here because it's a constant threat. And I see like one of the groups that I haven't gotten in with is the county extension. Even though they run business programs for rural businesses, they're uninterested in talking to me. So I keep trying to show up to their events, but it's not working yet. But they do, like I said, they run workshops on climate grief because the climate has changed and the pear industry has bottomed out because it's really too hot to grow the pears that they used to grow here. Harry and David is headquartered here, but a lot of the pears that they ship out now are actually shipped in from somewhere else because it's too hot to grow them here. So a lot of those fields have switched over to grapes, wine grapes, or marijuana, which is legal in Oregon, but you have to, it's a very, very expensive business to get into because the state regulates it heavily. And of course, it's not legal federally. And so being in the marijuana business is a giant pain in the rear. And they have to compete with the illegal grows up in the mountains as well, which use a lot of the water. That's the other thing, is that the state has been in drought for quite some time. And so that dries up the wells that everyone depends on for water out there and that the farmers depend on too. This summer was not so bad, but there was several bad summers before that. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but so it doesn't come up so much with me, but I see it in the news and it's a big concern locally.
I got it. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions?
I was reminded that Demographics Now is going away, and I was just curious, have any of you replaced it with something comparable? It's quite a loss.
I haven't found anything that replaces it, no.
Laura, we just did a trial with Simply Analytics, and it's got a lot of great data. There's a bigger learning curve to using it though. So yeah, I was talking with my colleague that makes the final decision on that. And if we decide to go with it, we're gonna have to do some pretty intense staff training and I know the company will provide some training, but I used to think that the interface was not great with Demographics Now, but I have new appreciation for it after playing with Simply Analytics for a couple of weeks. But
Here in Youngstown, we actually went with Policy Map. It's very cheap, much cheaper than Simply, and they don't have library card access yet, so we can't do remote registration. It's only available in the library, but it's coming sometime, they told us, this fall. Now, they haven't turned on the remote feature yet, but it is so much cheaper than Simply Analytics, and it does our job just fine. Now, we do also subscribe to Mergent Intellect, and that has the demographics in it too. I don't know what other libraries have, but if you have Mergent Intellect, you have a demographics module in there too.
Did you say Mergent, MERGENT?
Yeah, Mergent Intellect has, besides business lookup with the advanced search, they have the industry lookup, and they have the demographics, and then they also have the consumers module. Yeah, they have 6 different modules that you can use with Mergent Intellect, and we subscribe to that.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're stuck with Gale for a while yet because that comes to the state library.
Oh,
Yeah. But it doesn't mean I can't use the SBDC net resource on my own, especially if it's not a charge.
I just dropped an exit ticket in the chat. It's just a quick feedback form to let me know what you thought of today, what kinds of future topics you'd be interested in hearing about. And also you can make a note if you'd like to facilitate, be a featured speaker in a coming session. If you do that, just make sure you leave your name as well, because otherwise it's anonymous. Please fill that out so we can get feedback on what kinds of topics would be helpful for these meetings going forward. Roslyn, thank you so much. That was a
You're
great
welcome.
presentation, and you certainly delivered on the pretty mountains. So
It's God's country.
that was nice. This was great info. So thank you. And thanks everyone for being here. This is a monthly meeting, so if you're new, please come back again next month and let me know if you need the meeting invite or it be added to Slack. We'd love to have you there. And I think unless there are more questions, that's it. People are free to go. I'll leave the line open in case anyone does want to hang back and chat. Somebody says, "What is Slack?" I will drop the link. It is our discussion board.